Hello and welcome to Solely Singleton Season 14, Episode 9. I'm your host, Brad. This is my co-host, Eric.
How's it going?
Today is an auspicious day, or an auspicious occasion, or whatever that fancy saying is that I don't know because I'm a slob.
It's a big episode, dude. Like, it's not the longest by far, but this is a big episode.
This is the type of episode you don't get every week because it takes me months of work to get it out.
Yeah.
Today, we are going to go over the Miser's Cube, the $500 solution to owning a cube.
Yeah.
We're going to go in detail about what the Miser's Cube is. We're going to go into all of the details about how one gets built and what's in this iteration of the Miser's Cube.
Yeah, it should be pretty fun.
If you want to follow along at home, you can find this cube in the show notes, but also at cubecobra.com/c/the Miser's Cube. Also, if you want to follow along at home, this is going to be a YouTube video for the first time ever for this cube.
Which is pretty exciting because we've gotten pretty good YouTube videos already, and I think this will work out pretty well with showing the cards that we're talking about, because we're definitely not reading them all off.
Yes, we're going to do this episode assuming that you know Magic and I don't have to read you Lightning Bolt.
Right.
But if you want to use one of those, you can follow along at home much more easily. So check out the YouTube, check out the cube list itself, and let's get into this.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, before we get into this thing, when we started this episode, you pointed out to me that we are just shy of 4 years of me updating this cube, though last year kind of doesn't count because I didn't update it.
Yeah, I mean, either way, it was one of those that I was like, the Miser's Cube's been around for a while, hasn't it? And I looked at it, it was like, it's almost 4 years now since the first iteration. It's changed a lot.
It's weird because I think of it as like the younger brother cube because the starter cube is the key cube in my opinion, which is the $120 one.
Right, that was like what started a lot of this whole thing.
Yep. Back when it was the board game cube, episode 1 of this podcast. Never go listen to it. It sounds terrible and your ears will hurt.
Yeah, but fundamentally, the Miser's Cube has stayed in theory what it's supposed to be, but a lot of the cards have changed.
Yeah.
We're still working with $500 as like the budget, and that's the idea is $500 cube. You get sleeves and a box and cards and you play.
So let's break down what is in the budget and what we ended up at for the final cube value. So you've got a $500 budget to make a cube. You need sleeves, the card box, and the cards. I'm not counting basic lands. We're not doing that.
Because basic lands are free. Go to your local game store and be like, hey, I've got a cube. I need 35 lands of each. Can I have them? And they'll be like, sure. Here you go. Here's 45.
So first up for sleeves. You can do whatever you want. If you're a big fan of Dragon Shields and you got them, whatever.
Yeah.
For our example, I know that Potomac Distribution is where I go for bulk sleeves for my cube. They're not a sponsor or anything. It's just literally where I buy my sleeves.
Yeah.
And right now, Ultra Pro Eclipses, $41 for 600 of them. I'll throw a link to a random color into the show notes, and you can go click that if you want to have a cube worth of sleeves.
Which does give us some expectation of how many cards are going to be in this cube. 600 sleeves, $500. We're probably not looking at a 1,000 card cube.
No, so the cube is 450 cards, and you can have 30 of each land, and it's 600. There you go.
Yeah, makes sense.
In my personal cube, we use Dragon Shields. We also double sleeve. You're not going to do that with this $500 cube unless you're nutso.
I mean, you can. It's not a big deal. It's just you're double sleeving because some of the cards cost several $100s, and that is absurd.
As we learned today with my Eureka, some of them are worth more than several $100s.
So, yeah, I mean, you can double sleeve if you want, but these more budget kind of things, no card is going to be that expensive, so you don't have to worry too much. So just get whatever you want. If you have a bunch of Dragon Shields, cool. Ultra Pro Eclipses, like $40, $45 on Potomac. We'll have some links in the description.
Yeah, I use those in my modern deck. I know they're solid sleeves.
Yeah.
Then we've got KMC Card Box 1000, I guess is the name of this thing. This is a $21 clear box for storing cards. It's very solid. We have a friend who has had his for, I kid you not,
A decade.
way over. A decade ago, we were playing with him, and it was a decade old at least by then.
I was just thinking that. I was like, oh, God, it was a decade old when we were doing that. That was about a decade ago. Oh, God.
So we know this thing can hold up for 20 years.
Yeah, and it's like $20 on Amazon. Like, they're not hard to find either. I mean, you could technically just go with like bog standard white box that's folding, but
I wanted to do better than that this time. I didn't want to go right up against the budget. Now, there are other options. I know some people like the DEX solution, DEX.
Yeah.
That one's got a nice cube box thing. I think Ultra Pro makes one. I use one that you can buy off, I believe it's Etsy, called Kakapopo, Kakapopo.
I mean, there's just all kinds of boxes out there nowadays, really.
Yeah. So all the solutions you can imagine, but this is a great one for $20.
Yeah, which is what, like $60 of our $500 budget?
Yes. So $62 are gone. We have $438 to work with.
And 450 cards in a cube. That's going to be tough.
We have less than $1 a card. I did save another $10 and shave it off the top just so there's a little leeway, because I know prices fluctuate and sometimes you have to pay shipping on an order when I didn't have to, blah, blah, blah. So for this iteration of the cube, today is May 9th, 2022, as we record this. This cube is available today for $428. So I don't know what it's going to be worth in 6 months.
It's going to be worth more.
Yeah, it's always worth more. It's never worth less, guys.
I can hedge that bet and tell you it's going to be worth more because we've done this a few times. And the previous iterations go up.
We went through a pandemic where no human being alive was playing Magic the Gathering. The value of this cube went up during it.
Yes.
I cannot make this last forever. Every 6 months, this thing gets too expensive and I have to do changes again, and I usually wait for at least a year.
On that note, when we're talking 428, we're not like going through and picking and choosing. It's just whatever's the cheapest that's playable.
Yes.
It's not like, oh, we need near mint everything.
I check the moderately played box. I don't care if the corner's got some white nicks in it. It's a playable Magic card.
And when you're working on budget with this many cards, well, you have to accept that. That's just part of the deal.
And let's be honest with TCG Player, near mint, moderately played, same difference.
I mean, you're not wrong. It's disappointing, but you're not wrong.
All right, so let's move in to an important segment here before we start talking about the specifics in the cube. This is, what is a card worth? So you will look at this cube and you may have your eyebrow raise a couple times about a choice I made. You have to remember we have less than $1 per card to make this cube. And if I add a 10-cent card, I get to add a $2 card, etc. Lands are notoriously expensive in Magic.
Always just so much more than they should be.
Lands are the vast majority of where we spend our budget in this cube, and they are still subpar compared to where I would prefer.
Yes.
Because there are very few dual lands in Magic history worth playing, and the vast majority of them are over $10 a pop.
Yep, and $10 for a single card when you're looking at a budget of less than $1 per card means you need a lot of 10-cent cards.
Yeah, so that's not worth it, so we go with a few more subpar lands, so we're running like Prairie Stream instead of Hollowed Fountain, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It would be nice if you have shock lands available to you and you could just dump them in this cube for a free upgrade. Great, but I can't ship it out that way. So we have to do a lot of things in this cube where you might say, hey, I've got this, new Mythic 6-drop in Standard that's great. And I look at it and go, that's a $30 Magic card. Sweet Gum Recluse is 26 cents and is all right, verse it.
Yeah, which is one of those where it's like, yeah, if you like the one that you pulled out of a pack that's $26, slot it in, sure, whatever. But like when we're designing this, that's just not possible. We're looking for the good enough that's cheap.
Now, most of our expense in the non-lands tends to be for key archetype pieces. The most expensive of which right now at recording is Jace Wielder of Mysteries. He is something along the lines of like $7-ish right now on TCG Player, depending how your card ends up.
Right.
I'm willing to sacrifice several cards to get these high-value payoffs that make a deck or make a archetype that people like function and is like a key classic card in that deck. Blood Artist is a famous example of this. He's like a $5 card. It's kind of iffy, but it's worth it because everyone expects a Blood Artist if you're supporting aristocrats.
There's a certain amount of archetype defining cards that if they're close, like under $10, it's good to try and get them in there. There's only so much that can be done, but those are where the money gets spent. It's not getting spent on random removal spell that just happens to be expensive.
Yeah, so an example of this. We've got Jace Wheeler of Mysteries. We do not have Thassa's Oracle. Thassa's Oracle is like minimum $10 for a moderately played one, and it's like $12 realistically right now. It wasn't worth it when I already had Jace for cheaper. I threw Laboratory Maniac in for a few bucks. If you wanted to, and you wanted to spice that deck up more, you could do Thassa's Oracle instead. There is the other thing, where Thassa's Oracle sometimes has a bit of a caustic play pattern, and I'm throwing this out to the internet to random people who may want to buy into it, and I designed it trying to avoid things that would upset a first-time cube play group.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of why we're targeting a $500 cube. This isn't for somebody that already owns 3 cubes that's powered, unpowered, and an EDH cube. I mean, I guess if you want to, you can buy this as well, but we're trying to target new play groups. So it's a budget-oriented thing that'll get you a good cube to play.
Now, the other place where we bend value for a card. I will bend the budget to add classic cards into a cube that people expect to see in a standard unpowered cube, even if I don't think they're worth their percent of the price.
The truly iconic cards, the counterspells, the Path to Exiles, the Lightning Bolts.
Yes, Lightning Bolt and Counterspell are my go-tos, because in the case of both, they have 10, etc. iterations of them that have been printed throughout Magic history that are slightly worse.
Yeah, and they are worse.
Yes, these probably aren't worth $1.70 more than those each, but it's worth it because it's Lightning Bolt and Counterspell, so they're worth the $2.
Yeah, and I mean, there is a certain amount of that where it's just, those are iconic cards, and if you can get them in here, then that's what we want, because this is trying to be a full cube experience, even though it's a budget-oriented.
I could run a lot of cheap Lightning Strike variants, and you wouldn't miss Lightning Bolt in a draft.
Right.
But when you look at a cube, you expect to see Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, that covers the basics for if you see anything kind of weird. It's usually price related, or I was trying to make an archetype work within the price range and I had to enable it with some off-kilter cards.
Yeah, there's definitely some subpar cards, but they're cheap and they allow us to have the archetype defining cards. And they're good enough.
And I don't think any of them are embarrassing.
Right.
This isn't like the huge delta between your first pick and your 15th pick that's like astronomical.
No, they're just slightly worse. There are better things, but those better things are 8 times as expensive, but you won't really notice.
All right, so let's start talking about the cards we're going to see here. Real quick, things you're not going to see. There's no fetch lands, there's no dual lands, there's no Chase the Mind Sculptor. You don't get no swords. We're too cheap for that. Artifacts in general are wildly expensive.
That's one of the big things is like when you look at the price of just random artifacts, they're always expensive. Just because they're colorless and you can play them in EDH, but they're always more expensive than you think they are.
Yeah. The other thing is anything that's currently seeing play in Modern or Pioneer, apparently. Did you really need to up the price of Bramble Sovereign to $20?
Ooh, geez, I didn't know it went that high.
Yeah, that got to be in here because it was like 80 cents at one point.
Yeah, and it was a great card for that price.
It was amazing. It's a cool card in Cube. I love it in Cubes.
Yeah.
But I'm not spending $20 of our price on it.
No, it doesn't define an archetype in any way. It's just a good creature. So, yeah, I mean, there's just things like that that's just not in the budget.
There are types of cards that we like that are hard to get in. These are things like your fixing lands are obviously we did what we could.
Yeah.
High tier planeswalkers. Eric loves himself a Renin 6.
Like we said, Jace the Mind Sculptor, Renin 6, Liliana the Veil. They're the highest tier walkers. They're the most powerful, and they're the most expensive.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that the choices that we made are that much lower. Like, they're still good cards.
Yeah, we don't get the best of the best of the best, sir. You're not getting your Snapcaster, you're not getting your Tarmogoyf. You know, your high end gets used everywheres. Sorry, they aren't going to fit in the budget.
Speaking of, you're not getting the best tutors.
Yeah, tutors are always expensive. This is a very close to tutorless cube.
I wholly blame EDH on that one.
Yeah. Yeah, and whatever modern deck is making Finale of Devastation $40.
Yeah, there's nothing we could do about that. Like we said, artifacts are tough. Another thing that's tough is the best reanimation targets. There's not that many of them, and they are Gristlebrand. That's not here.
So we do still get some. They're quite good. They're in power level with the cube. I actually think specifically reanimation's in an okay spot in this cube.
Yes.
It's not the strongest reanimation deck you'll ever draft in any cube, but it's about on par with the rest of the cube power level wise.
Yeah. So with that, I guess we can kind of go into the archetypes or designs.
Let's go through the designs first. A couple things you will see in the cube. We have 10 talismans / signets, depending on which was cheaper for each color pair. Sorry, I didn't get picky.
Which, I mean, is fine. We had an entire episode about it, and we made a decision on which ones we liked more, but they're the same. So whatever's cheapest works.
You do get some spicy stuff like Grafted War Gear, fun things like Oath of Druids, which is a really fun, challenging deck to try to pilot.
Managed to get 22 Planeswalkers.
Yes. Not all of them are the highest tier Planeswalker, but none of them are true junkers. Eric will have his rant about Obnixilis.
I want to talk about Obnixilis for a second and talk about true junk, but it's like 30 cents, so fine.
He is a standard value Planeswalker, and he's probably still like the 5th best Planeswalker in black, and he's the only one of them that doesn't cost over $20.
Yeah, that's fair.
Except Tevesh Zot is like $7 very frustratingly. Why is that card not $2? So I can put it in here.
Yeah, it was just slightly too high. I think you could maybe finagle that budget.
If it was under 5, you and I could have argued how to get it in, but it's not worth it.
Yeah. There was a certain point where the cube has to be done and we have to make this episode and actually release it, or it'll be another 4 years. So
yeah.
So with that out of the way, we can just go into the actual archetypes of the cube. You're gonna see all of the general things that you would expect to see. We've got blue-white control, blue-black control, mono-red aggro, white weenie.
Yeah, the very basics are all there. The fun, interesting things you can draft are, we have human support, focused in white, but it branches out all over the place.
Which does give that little bit of flavor to those white weenie decks that make it that bit of extra fun instead of just playing white weenie.
Yeah, so when you pick a champion of the parish instead of a random 2/1 for 1.
Yeah.
We have, very importantly, this is the big reveal of the episode. We previously invented the Ninjas deck, which became somewhat popular. That's no longer in the budget.
Not even close.
Because some major company went and made a new set around ninjas and spiked the price of every ninja on the planet.
Yeah, Ninjas is not within the budget anymore, but I am super excited about the equipment artifact aggro deck that we put together in Boros. This is super cool.
This is attempt number 5063 to make Boros not the shittiest color pair in Magic history.
And I'm happy with it, dude. There's definitely more that can be done to make it more fundamental and strong and stuff like that, but I'm happy with where it's going. A bunch of the artifacts are equipments that bring dudes in, and then the aggressive guys, along with some actually pretty cool actual Boros cards.
Yeah. Brenner Battlehammer is the one that I'm in love with.
Oh yeah. So honestly, I'm super excited about this specific archetype, and I mean, I've always kind of liked the Boros aggro decks, but this is going to be fun to draft. It's going to be really fun to draft.
I do think this warrants testing in fully powered up cubes.
Yeah.
Because in this cube, I can't run Jite. I can't run swords. I refuse to put a skull clamp in this cube because it would never lose a game of Magic.
Oh, come on, dude. And honestly, you can't even run Shadow Spear.
Yeah, Shadow Spear's randomly over $10.
Yeah.
I can't even run generic Bone Splitter variant.
Let alone Stoneforge Mystics and stuff like that. There's a lot that can be done in unbudget restricted cubes, with the fact that there's also just a lot of new cards that are like Dancing Sword, Barb Spike, Ancestral Blade. You've got like Rabbit Battery and Lizard Blades. Like there's a lot of new cards that make this archetype interesting.
Yeah. So then we can move into blue-white tempo is here. It's not just blue-white control that you can draft there. There's a bit of blink support. You've got my favorite 3-drop in Soul Herder. You have the All-Star Ephemerate, and you just have a pile of very good low-to-the-ground creatures.
Yeah, you've got your Exclusion Mage and Cloud Concealer, and actually, one ninja did make it, Myth Syndicate Naga.
He is still fantastic, too.
Yeah.
That card is just flat out good in tempo decks.
Yeah.
I kept him even though I didn't keep ninjas. Then you've got like the brand new Sinister Concierge, which I think does double duty in both blue-white decks.
Yeah, I'm excited to play with that card.
Yeah.
That's a cool card.
And obviously, I say this is a blue-white tempo deck. You can draft it in blue-black. There is some valid targets to be adding in black there. You can try all over the place.
Yeah.
Exact color doesn't matter too much. It's just where we planted the seeds, and then you can branch out as you start drafting the format repeatedly.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of overlap in these archetypes and in the colors, which is what you would expect from a normal cube. Like, you want the archetypes overlapping so that if during the draft you get cut off, you can audible into something else without being screwed.
And as a fledgling cube designer, this is something you're probably paranoid about when you're like, oh God, Brad did all this work to make it so that all this stuff has cross-pollination and this ties into this other archetype over here and this other color, stuff like that. Don't worry about it. That stuff happens on accident as you're playing with the cube and adding cards, and you'll find yourself halfway through a change and you're like, oh my God, this has great interaction with this other deck I wasn't thinking about. That just happens to you. Don't worry about it. I'm not like a super genius. Most people would say I'm an idiot.
Yes, most people would say that.
So there's nothing special about what I did versus what you can do when you do future updates. But yes, there is a lot of, you can end up using your Warkite Marauder not in a tempo deck. That's why it's there, but I've seen it successfully used in random other decks that I didn't even think to put it into the final 23 of.
Yeah, I mean, on that, I've seen it work decently in the blue-green flash deck. It doesn't have flash, but it's still just working well in what that's doing.
Yes, which is another smaller deck that's in here. Again, it's a little more fringe. It's like a challenge deck to put together.
Yeah.
Then we've got your generic token decks that's primarily in white, but you can go into white-black, you can go into white-green mid-range, you can go into white-red aggressive tokens. You get the picture. Tokens are all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, tokens are basically everywhere other than blue, except blue still has a bit of token support because of the spells matters, and that just generally gives out tokens, as Young Pyromancer and Murmuring Mystic are going to do.
Yeah, and that obviously is a blue-red deck, which is spells matters. That's just going to be your generic blue-red control deck with an emphasis on anything that's going to trigger those types of cards. Then we have the classic. You can draft Reanimate. It's pretty solid, honestly.
It is.
I'm very happy Sarah's Emissary is only like 280. It is probably my favorite target to reanimate right now.
Ooh. I like Sphinx of the Steel Wind.
So Sphinx of the Steel Wind, yes, it's a classic. Sundering Titan's in here. Triplicate Titan, I think, is a very good one.
Yeah.
You may want to cut one of the two when you don't like Sundering Titan or something. Just keep Triplicate in or something.
Battlesphere is a good option. I mean, you've got some big green creatures as well. So even though there's no Gristlebrand, there are good targets.
Yeah, one of my sleeper favorites, this is the real spice. Ruin Grinder is in here because it's cheap and it's actually a very solid target.
Oh, yeah.
It mountain cycles itself into the graveyard all on its own.
Yep.
It's a 7/4 menace, and then everyone gets to Wheel of Fortune when it dies. So it's like, even if you go all in on turn 2, you can recover.
Yeah. And on that, I was happy to see that there is an all-in version of the Reanimate. Generally, if you want to win, you're going to be playing a more control-y deck with Reanimate, but managed to get some combo Reanimate with Unmarked Grave.
You could try going all in with like a turn 2, turn 3 of Unmarked Grave, or cycle something in the yard, or loot something in the yard.
Yeah.
And then hit them with an Exhume, or a Death, or Persist.
So it's just one of those that, like, it's not the optimal, but that's how I enjoy playing Reanimate, so I was excited to see that that option was there.
Yeah, and I think that works quite well in red-black.
Yeah.
Like, you could go turn 1 Faithless Looting, in a turn 2, go for it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's going to do pretty good most of the time. So, speaking of combo, we do have the creature combo, which is in basically everything other than blue.
Yes, for newer drafters, this is where you do basic persist combo. There's a lot of variation to how you can trigger it in this cube, but you take something like Renata, Good Luck Unicorn, Grumgully, or Vizier of Remedies.
Anaphenza. There's a lot of options in the cube.
You take any of those, you add in a sack outlet and a persist creature of your choice. We have 2 major ones here, which are Kitchen Finks for infinite life, or Murderous Redcap for infinite damage.
Dude, I think you're sleeping on Woodfall Primus.
Infinite griefing. If you do this trick with a Woodfall Primus, I need to see a picture.
That is an achievement unlocked.
And that's also the type of bullshit I do to my play group.
Yeah.
How about you just don't have lands?
Exactly. But yeah, so the creature combo, it's mostly Naya based, but it's just throughout the cube just because there's so much redundancy trying to build into it.
It is key, though, that we went a little deeper than we normally would on the part of the combo that's easy to get a hold of, because there is no tutoring to mention of in this cube, so it's not like true unpowered or powered cube where you can go, all right, I've got Kiki Jiki, and I've got Splinter Twin, and I've got Deceiver Exarch, and I can just put 2 in my deck and tutor them up at will.
Yeah, I've got 3 tutors and it'll be fine and enough draw that, like, whatever. So you do need more than just 1. You need some redundancy in the actual deck.
I do think the best version of creature combo is when you play a value mid-range deck and can threaten to combo off.
Yes.
Because it forces your opponent to respect your otherwise very fair and crushable deck.
Right. You make them hold on to their resources, and as they're holding on to it, you smash them in the face and kill them.
We also, back to black, which is tangentially related to the deck we just talked about, we have Aristocrats, where you're going to find a lot of sack outlet support throughout red and black.
Yep.
And then you can obviously go into the white tokens supporting that, or any part of the creature combo working with it. You can have a very nice Jund to Shell that's a little slower Aristocrats deck with creature combo.
Yeah, and it really does have all of the options there for the Aristocrats. It's got the quick Judith kind of kills, and it's got the slower one. There's actually a lot of support for Aristocrats, but that's because it is overlapping with a lot of things.
And then if you want to play a super slow deck, we've got the Wildfire deck here.
Yeah.
It's not the strongest deck in cube history, but at this power level, it's just right.
Yeah, which is exciting. I mean, I always love a good Wildfire deck, right? They're just fun.
It's the classic old school deck.
Yeah.
If you want to be real mean, I kept Upheaval in here, so have fun with that.
Yeah, that sounds fun to play against.
That's like Wildfire, but more fun.
Exactly. It's in blue. Yeah, I mean, there's not too much more. There's Ramp.
Yeah, there's all the classics. Red deck wins, you name it. They're all here. But those are the special cases we've got.
There is still like the black-green value-y token, yard matters, mid-range thing.
Yeah, it's that Jundy slower version of Aristocrats where you play creature combo in it.
Yeah.
It plays a lot more like modern Jund,
Yes.
where everything is trying to slowly outvalue the opponent.
There's definitely smaller archetypes as well and a bunch of other things, but that's the core to the cube, which mimics general unpowered cubes. There aren't wild things like...
I didn't invent the ninjas deck this time. The spiciest I got was adding in a bunch of artifact matter stuff and seeing how far I could push it.
Yeah, which is exciting. So
I'm still happy the ninjas deck was a good idea.
after all of the failures that we've done before on testing random stuff.
Stupid counters. +1/+1 counters is never good.
It's never worked for us. Ever. One of these days, Brad. One of these days.
All right, so let's point out a couple of fun cards that are in here that aren't specific to any given archetype.
So I'm going to start. Prime Speaker Vanifar. Let's go. It's not pod, but it's pod.
I have a problem. I put this in because I got pressured to put it in by a certain co-host of mine.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The problem is you can't afford to put pod in this cube.
Nope.
It is a nice way. There are a lot of like singleton cards in here that are cheap and show you a way you could grow a section. Pod decks are very fun, but very difficult to pilot and draft. If you find one of your playgroup members really likes this and wants to try to go further, go out of your way to spend the money and grab a birthing pod. Check out that new Vivian. She could be a cute addition as well. Throw them all in there, give them a chance, see what they come up with.
Yeah, because it's definitely not too powerful. There's a lot of work that goes into it, but the people that enjoy doing it quite enjoy doing it a lot, which is why Prime Speaker Vannevar's in there.
One of my favorite archetypes to draft in Cube is the Cheat into Play deck, which is usually in rug colors, and you're running Show and Tell, you're running maybe Eureka or Natural Order, you name it, you've got it there, right?
Yeah.
Sneak Attack.
Oh yeah, sneak attacks, like your jam through the breach, that kind of stuff.
Unfortunately, everything we just named is wildly expensive, or at least $10.
Right.
However, I was able to fit in a couple of B teams from those. So we have Arcane Artisan, which is usually a backup in a Show and Tell deck. We run it as a backup in Legacy Show and Tell sometimes.
It works pretty decently. It just is a creature that's only got 3 toughness, so it's a backup.
And then Magus of the Order, which is like super discount Natural Order. I wanted to get something in there as a Natural Order variant to give someone some spice.
Yeah.
If you find your playgroup likes this, maybe look into buying the Natural Order. It's not that much more than what we have for Cube budget here, but I couldn't argue it.
Yeah, it was like 10, 15 or something like that. It's just a bit too much, but not completely unreasonable.
Whereas this is 25 cents. It's not as good by any means, but it's something to make you figure out if it's worth going that direction.
Yeah. As you had mentioned earlier, there's also Oath of Druids, which is like, it's a single card that's an entire archetype that completely redefines how you draft and how you play, and it's so cool.
And as a final bit of spice, we have Oscar Rubbish Reclaimer. He's kind of like a signal here. So I don't think he's like the most powerful card, but I was super happy to see him because this is the perfect type of cube where I have a lot of looters here. We've got like Merfolk Looter, Suspicious Stowaway, Looter Core. There's a lot of variation you can get in looters in this cube, and one-time looting things.
Yeah.
So with that and Oscar, and then you're running like your Jace win condition.
There's some spice there.
It's a spicy thing to do in blue-black that's not the Ninja deck, which I had to get rid of.
Right. And I do think that because there's so many of those loot variants, Oscar will play decently just in those blue-black kind of decks, even if there's like a bit of Reanimator in it. It's a control deck. You put Oscar in there and just so much looting, it'll work. So it'll be interesting to see how that one actually plays out.
All right, I think that does it for this episode. We've given you the rundown. I don't see too much else that is worth going over in great detail. We always take questions and stuff. If you're watching this on YouTube, just leave a comment down below. We'll get to it. We don't get that many comments, so we can get to everybody who asks questions. Well, unless we blow up and become super famous. That'd be nice.
Won't happen, so it'll be fine.
And if you're listening to this on the podcast, we are always available, either on Twitter if you want to do it that way, or sending us an email to the show email, sollysingleton@gmail.com. We will answer everything we can.
And before we finish up, just one more reminder of like, this is a starting point. If you want to just buy it, play it, it'll work well. But most of the time, we recommend you customizing it to your own cube. Don't be afraid to customize it to your own cube. Put the spice that you enjoy into it. If you have the lands, put those in. Don't worry too much. If you have questions, like Brad said, send it in, but don't worry. Make it your cube.
And as we talked about, sometimes I add things into this cube specifically to show you things you may want to change in the future. We build these as starting points for you to, over time, develop. This is to get you into the cube community, not to be something that you just buy and then draft forever. Drafting a single build of a single cube forever gets boring over time. You will want to update it eventually.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good cube where it is. And like, if you're only drafting once every 6 months, whatever, that's probably fine. But yeah, you'll probably get bored of it if you draft any reasonable amount. And yeah, make it your own. Have fun with it.
All right, let's get out of here for the week then.
Sounds good.